Welcome to Formed, where each week we navigate a relevant topic or question through honest conversations. We are three pastors with three different backgrounds on staff together at Irving Bible Church in Irving, Texas. We believe we are constantly being formed in the way of Jesus for the sake of the world, and we hope this podcast helps with that. So let's jump into this week's episode of Formed. Welcome back to another week of Formed. Guys, Barry's back. Back again.
Woo!
So, we took a couple weeks off, and as we anticipated the arrival of the one and only Barry Jones.
There we go.
Here we are in the flesh.
We're so
I hope
excited.
I haven't forgotten how to do a podcast, although we were sort of just figuring it out when I left.
When you left,
so,
yeah.
So
Well, and we did
when
have
we were
you
starting again.
back and forth.
That's right. I have
Yeah.
been on the podcast,
Yes.
even though I haven't actually
Yes.
been on the green sofa
That's right.
in 3 months.
Yeah.
So
I have had a handful of people ask me,
Wait a minute.
has Barry came back in to do podcasts? I'm like, no, he hasn't.
the magic of technology.
There you go. Yeah.
I haven't gotten to ask you many questions about your sabbatical.
Yeah.
About the only firm story I know is that you went white water rafting and you fell out of the raft.
Hey now. Hey now.
So to me, your sabbatical was whitewater rafting and you getting back in the boat and wondering where you're at.
And I feel like that's a sermon illustration that's coming up.
Oh, there
soon,
will be
right?
there will be a sermon illustration. So if you're watching this in advance of Sunday, don't tell everybody.
Yeah. Don't tell everybody about his whitewater rafting. So you have been gone for the past 3 months.
It's true.
On a sabbatical.
Yes.
If you could, I know we talked pre-sabbatical what
Sure.
this was going to look like. Now post-sabbatical.
Yeah.
Could you remind people what is a sabbatical and what these kind of last 3 months have looked like?
Sure. So our church has had a policy for a number of years that every 7 years, pastors get to take a 3-month time away. And it's a time just for rest, a time for renewal, right? It's a time to cultivate spiritual health, relational health, and really just with the recognition, you look back in the biblical pattern and you see, of course, the pattern of 1 day of rest every 7 days, built into the rhythm of creation, a part of the life of the people of Israel, just building in a rhythm of rest. But even as you look back in the story of the nation of Israel, they talked about this idea of having a jubilee year, and every 7 years they would let the ground lie fallow to rest, to renew, to recover. And so there just seems to be this principle that, especially when you think about the life of ministry and the reality that the work that we do is soul work. It is caring for the souls of others, but it comes at a certain kind of cost to one's own soul. It's just depleting at a soul level to do this work that God has called us to do. And so the elders determined years ago that this would be a good practice for us, and many other churches do this as well, where 3 months every 7 years, just to take that opportunity to pause. And for me, part of what I was so looking forward to going into it is the idea that I just needed a season where I could just be a Christian, right? That my spiritual life wasn't for public consumption. And I actually had a moment early on in the sabbatical. I was working with the coach, and I just got teary-eyed talking about it. But that I said I needed to know that my desire for God wasn't just for my professional, right? That God was more than merely a prop for my professional advancement. And I got all choked up just getting those words out because I needed to know that down deep in my soul. I wanted to be with God because I wanted to be with God.
Yeah.
Right, not because I wanted to have something to say next Sunday, and so that was a really, really meaningful part of the time away.
So then you spent time with Friar Tuck.
Yeah. So,
how did you do that? How did you tackle that in sabbatical?
What did that look like?
Yeah, what did it look like?
Yeah. So on the front end of sabbatical, I had planned a retreat, just a personal time to get away. So the second weekend, I left and drove out to New Mexico and spent a week with the monks at Christ in the Desert Monastery, just this gorgeous place in the desert mountains in New Mexico, where there's a group of men who live and follow the ancient monastic rule of St. Benedict. And so I went and lived in their guest house for a week and just entered into their rhythms of prayer and spent time in the beauty of creation, spent a lot of time reading. And in this place that I'm just surrounded by these rock formations that are incredible. I remember having the thought, like, I want to memorize these rocks, right? Because there's no photo that I could show you that could capture really the beauty and the glory of these rock formations all around me. And the thought that occurred to me while I was there, and I ended up writing a letter to each of my kids and to my wife and to my mom while I was out there. And just this idea that really struck me is like the beauty of creation is an icon of the love of God for me. And so just being in that place, surrounded by beauty and kind of basking in that sense of my belovedness, not because of anything that I've done or accomplished, right? Like I needed to experience that sense of God's love that wasn't about my performance for him in ministry. And so just carving out that space to kind of be away on the front and really, in a lot of ways, set the tone for what the rest of the sabbatical entailed. I came back from that, and those next few weeks, there was just this kind of sense of like, well, what do I do with myself? What do I do with my time? And I had this almost pressure I think I put on myself of like, I don't want to screw this up, right? I don't want to miss anything that I'm supposed to get out of this. But I just ended up spending a lot of time at coffee shops, spending a lot of time reading. I'll talk about on Sunday. Really kind of did a deep dive into the teaching of Dallas Willard, who's a writer on the spiritual life that I think is one of those few writers that'll still be read generations from now. And so I just did a deep dive into his own writing and writing that's been done about him, a biography, a collection of essays of folks that wrote in his honor after he passed away. And so spent a lot of time just reading, reflecting, a lot of time journaling. And so that was really great. Now, in the middle of the sabbatical in June, our family went and spent time together in Italy. And so where May was this very reflective time with God, right? Journaling, reading. June was like pasta and family and right, a very different kind of experience, and yet really spiritually rich nonetheless, because this is like time together. It's making memories. It's eating great food, and so we just had a great time together, traveling around northern Italy. We took a train up into the Alps in southern Switzerland, and just incredible, some beautiful places. And again, surrounded by beauty oftentimes is just deeply restorative at a soul level for me. And then we got back from that and really then just had a few weeks left before reentry. So the whole thing went really quickly. And I remember feeling that sense after getting back from vacation of like, I want to get back to month one of reading and reflecting. And yet month 3 is different from month 1. Month 3 is very much kind of preparing for reentry. And so I began to meet with people on our team and kind of get a sense of what had happened, what had transpired over the course of the last 3 months, and began to think now again about sermon series that are coming up, and begin to think about, initiatives that we want to take with the staff. And so the last month was a lot of just preparation for reentry. And then hit the ground running. This last week, we did an elders retreat, the first weekend, kind of post-sabbatical, spent the whole weekend with the elders. And that was really great because it wasn't me coming in with a lot of, polished presentations. It was a lot of, let me share with you guys what God's been doing in my life for the course of the last 3 months, and let me invite you into some of that. So we just had a really rich experience. And then this week's been, reentry with the staff. So it's been really great.
I think what's interesting is we talk a lot about Sabbath and the idea that it's this day where we don't produce, right? This day where there is a God and I'm not him. It's this realization that I don't have to produce. That's not where my identity is. And then that's one day every week. And then you think about sabbatical where you did that for 3 months, right? You weren't Barry senior pastor. Yeah. You were Barry dad, husband, follower of Jesus, all of those things, right?
We referred to me as sabbatical dad around the house. Like sabbatical dad is available to, run people all here, there, and yonder. And So I think that's just a greater emphasis on you are not what you produce. You're not your best sermon. Yeah. All of that. Yeah. It was really, and, part of what was interesting for me learning from this experience is sometimes the spiritual discipline of Sabbath is hard for me because I'm like, I've got stuff I need to do. And there's just that sense of like, I got to choose. Am I going to trust and surrender and use this day to rest, to let go of my sense of control and my sense of my sense of sovereignty and trust in the sovereignty of God? Or am I going to continue to be busy and, get the things done that I need to do? So there's a discipline that comes with that one day a week. Well, I don't think I fully anticipated how much discipline was required for sabbatical. And that sounds ridiculous. So like, you got 3 months off, but for me, especially on the front end, that sense of letting go of whatever illusion of control that I may have been clinging to in terms of leading this church, that it actually made me aware of just how sort of tight-fisted that I was in trying to hold on to some sense of control, because now I have to just let it go. And so I came across a line from Dallas Willard in the biography I was reading, like within the first week of sabbatical, that just really struck me. And it's one of those that I say it, and it feels almost like it's common sense. Well, duh, like Barry, of course. And yet, it spoke to me so powerfully, where Dallas says, what you continue to worry about is the clearest indication of what you have yet to surrender to God. And I found myself the first week of sabbatical with just this sort of constant sense of simmering anxiety. I didn't sleep really well, right? I'm off work. I get to just kick back, relax, and rest. And I couldn't really sleep because I was just churning on the inside. And it was that reality of like, I have to surrender any sense of control for the next 3 months to God. I have to trust in my team and let go. And that proved to be really hard, but it proved to be, I think, the central theme of sabbatical for me, which was this idea of surrender, learning to surrender myself, learning to surrender my work, our church, my family, just learning to practice surrender.
Did you ever use sabbatical like as a weapon? Of like, hey, I'm on sabbatical, so I can't do that.
Yeah.
Because that's how I think I would use earlier, like, they used it like, hey, sabbatical dad, he can do this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on sabbatical, guys.
Can't do it.
There were times where I wrestled with that, right? Of like, wait, I'm on sabbatical. I'm supposed to be resting, and I don't need to do that right now. Whether it was things around the house or whatever, and so just the tension between. I think part of what I wrestled with is like, I have really made a point. We've talked a lot on this podcast about the importance of that discipline of Sabbath, the weekly rest. And I kind of had this sense of like, well, am I supposed to try to do Sabbath every day for 3 months? Because there's a sense in which that's kind of unrealistic, because Sabbath, I sort of let go of any sense of responsibility as best I can. And yet the reality is that it's sort of unsustainable to do that for 3 months. And so there was this weird thing of like, should I do that? Can I do that? What's okay? All that.
A lot of Netflix cooking shows.
I did spend some time with Netflix and the Food Network.
So what would you say is the biggest difference between pre-sabbatical Barry and post-sabbatical Barry?
So I feel like I'm coming back really well rested. I'm coming back with a renewed sense of passion and zeal for the work, for the church, but I think more deeply a renewed sense of passion and zeal for God, right? And a real desire to lead from that place. So this coach that I've worked with, as we were processing through that idea of surrender, but also with that, there's this reality of stewardship, right? There are things that are mine to steward, to work hard and to as Paul talks about, I want to be poured out like a drink offering, right? To steward what is mine to steward and to surrender what is mine to surrender. And sometimes I think I confuse those things and have that sense of it's all mine to steward and that sense of control. And so I'm coming back with this idea that I want to walk through life and leadership from that place of, Lord, help me steward what is mine to steward and to surrender what is mine to surrender. To lead from a place of deep authenticity and not performance. And to walk in that posture of stewarding what is mine to steward, surrendering what is mine to surrender.
Sissy, when, obviously Barry's sabbatical is planned, not everybody in the world, has an exact planned time to be away or to take a break. What would you say is, maybe if we're all in the routines right now, going through life and work and packed schedules, what would you say is some of the signs of, all right, I think, what is something you look out for you? You're like, I think I need some time away. I think I need a break right now.
Yeah, when I think about that question, I think there's, I've heard it described this way, and I think it's a good way to think about it. There's two kinds of tired. There's a good tired when you've worked hard, you've done a really good job, and from it, there's a period of just temporary exhaustion. It's temporary where you can recover from that with some time of rest and, things like that. You can get back to your everyday activities. But then there's a dangerous kind of tired where there's this, and maybe it's just intense schedule, intense workload that leads to chronic inner tiredness, fatigue. It's not necessarily where you feel physically tired, exhausted, although that can be a sign. Oftentimes it's just compulsive overworking, right? Ruth Haley Barton talks about these signs of hurry sickness, where we're just chronically busy, where we're more irritable, right? Where little things just set us off, or we're hypersensitive, where someone says or does something and we're just much more sensitive to getting hurt or upset about something like that. It's when I start to not take care of myself. Maybe I'm not eating right or exercising or sleeping well, constantly thinking about work. I can't shut my brain off from that, or constantly checking email. That's always a good sign for me too. I'm always on. I think even just escapist behaviors is another one of the ones that she talks about that I've seen in myself, where I'm so tired that I'm just looking to distraction, whether that's, Netflix, and not that that's bad, but, overdoing that, whether it's overeating, social media, whatever it is, whatever your thing is. So those are some of the signs that I would say, hey, it's time for me to take a break. These are some unhealthy things that I see in myself. But I also think that there are these just healthy patterns of taking a break, that you don't have to get to the dangerous tired, right? We should take breaks.
Yeah. It's that idea of the sane rhythms of work and rest. And so that we practice these rhythms that we've talked a lot about, one day a week that I just set aside the have to and embrace the get to, that I intentionally embrace rest and renewal, not just relaxation, but actually restorative rest, that's built in as a regular rhythm. But then also just recognizing, I think about sabbatical, there's part of me that always is a little bit feels funny talking about it, because it's an incredible privilege that I get as a pastor that not everybody gets. But I think about the fact that one of my buddies a few years ago was having sabbatical coming up, and crawling to get to the finish line of, so he could get to sabbatical, just barely made it. And it was so needed and such a gift that he got to have it. And I feel like I was at a different place going into this. It wasn't this, I'm desperate for this time away. I'm sort of dying to get to the finish line. It was much more, I need this now so that I don't get to that place down the road.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of those things, as a sort of broader principle, is just recognizing that I need to build into my life some sense of rhythm of that kind of rest, renewal, so that I don't get to that place that I'm dangerously depleted.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that I try to do is at the start of the year is you do this too. You have to do it because of what's on your plate, is thinking through where are those times that I'm going to take an extended period of time off. For this year, we knew Barry was going to be gone all summer, and so I didn't take much time in the summer. I'm going away next week because,
Wait, really?
And it's not that I'm dangerously tired. It's just, hey, we worked really hard, and now I get to take this time off to refresh and renew myself and delight in the people around me and the place that I'm going to go and all of that. So I think that's good.
Yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they have a vacation or a break or a time away coming up, could you both share some like do's and don'ts, just some practical, hey, this is what I would tell you if I could tell you 2 things for you to do or not do?
Yeah. So I'll just tell you, like I said, I'm going on vacation next week. Here's what I plan to do. Here's what I try to do every time I go on vacation. So I'm a big believer of I'm going to be off. And so I try to set up my team that I'm gone for 5 days.
Yeah.
You know what? IBC is going to be fine without me for 5 days. We definitely will. And that's the part that, like, I am not what I produce. It's everything's, the world will still go on. IBC will do great. I can go away, but I need to set up my team well. So what are the things that, what are responsibilities I have that maybe I have to transition to someone else, or things that are happening in those days that I'm gone that I have to make someone else aware of. So setting up my team, what I don't usually do this. I think I'm going to do this time is I'm taking email off my phone.
I was going to say,
yeah. Usually I keep it on, and so that first day, it's like tempting to I could just check once, but now I think I'm going to take it off so I don't check it all, and that's what I need to do. Someone else might not need to do that, because that helps me say I am off, and then setting up my team also to say if something does happen, here's who you could go to. Now, if there's an emergency, of course, there's this thing that only I know. They would call me, but most of life is not an emergency. And so I think those are some of the things of setting people up well before you go, setting yourself up well by having those safeguards if you need to do something like taking email off. But then even thinking about what am I going to do during that 5 days, right? So even for a vacation, I'm thinking about what is it that I want to experience? What is it I want to do? What is it that I want to get out of it? And it could be as simple as I just need rest. And so here's how I'm going to go after that. To me, that might be reading or, delighting in good meals and God's creation. I'm going to
play video
Newport
games.
Beach. What?
Play video games.
Play video games. Video games is not one of my...
Not your thing? No. I was like, wait, is this something I don't know about, Sissy?
No, this didn't happen while you were gone. No.
Okay.
Peeps.
Will Peeps be
Peeps only... That's Easter.
I thought we were going to get through an episode without reference to Peeps. Golly.
So anyway, that's like some of my do's and don'ts.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
What would you add?
Well, I mean, it's more underscoring things that you said. A couple things that really strike me in terms of restorative rest, right? That disengaging from work, from productivity, and not just relaxing, but really resting. 2 big things I think are surrounded by beauty and engaged delight.
Yeah.
That for me, those are huge, right? So where can I go that's going to just be where I'm in a beautiful place? And sometimes it's, like I went to some incredibly beautiful places. We had during this stretch we were in Italy, it was like, we went up into the Alps and like, this is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. The next day we were on Lake Como and this is one of the most beautiful places I've been my entire life. The next day we were in this little village kind of on the edge of the Dolomites. This is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. So those are like sort of extravagant beauty, if you will. Yeah. But toward the end, I rented a little cabin in the woods in East Texas to go and actually do some work around planning for 2024 and sermon series that we'll be doing next year, and really excited about that. But like just being in a place, with trees and water, like anything you can do that's sort of surrounded by beauty is restorative at a soulish level, and then engaged delight. So great meal, friends, wine, like those things that just bring delight to your heart. That is part of what it means, I think, for us to engage in restorative rest. I do think that the taking the email off your phone is a great, because we just sort of so compulsively, I became just aware over sabbatical of how attached to my phone I am. And it was funny because it was actually like I had to we shut down my IBC email. Yeah. And so I wasn't getting emails very often. Like my inbox was all just junk mail on my personal email. And like, I had to get accustomed to, am I not important? Because nobody's emailing me, and
wait until you open that IBC email.
Yeah. So, but yeah, surrounded by beauty, engaged delight, I think are a couple of really big things. And then the other thing that I was thinking of when you were kind of framing the question for us is just the reality that sometimes it's a lot more than the workload and the demand and the busyness. Sometimes our weariness comes at a soul level that's more about the anxiety of work and life, and that what I really need for restorative rest is not just setting aside work, but actually what are the things that are really weighing on my soul? What's the anxiety that I'm carrying in my body? And that's where I come back to this practice of surrender that Dallas Willard would talk about, the idea that the human soul is not made to bear the weight of outcomes, right? The will is made to surrender to God. And oftentimes those places where we carry anxiety is connected to, I don't want to oversimplify, but it's connected to the need for us to bring that to God and to really surrender it to Him. That what you continue to worry about is the clearest indication of what you've yet to surrender to God. And so there may be, in addition to getting away and being in a beautiful place and engaging delight, there may need to be some soul searching before God to say, God, here's the things that I'm carrying heavily in my soul, in my body, that I need to bring to you and practice surrender.
Yeah, I think it's I think Eugene Peterson talks about this. He says, Sabbath, time off, whatever it is, it's this time where we could pay attention to what is God doing in me? What is God doing around me? And that's something that I've been thinking about, even as like I said, go into vacation next week, of taking some time to think about and to just pause and to think about what is God doing in me? What is God doing around me?
Yeah.
I think that's
I think we've talked about it on the podcast before. What's really happening here?
Yes.
Right? What's really happening inside of me right now? Yeah.
I think an underrated part of sabbatical, Sabbath, rest is the re-entry part. We really you don't really talk about that a ton. And so like for me, I always have a rule for our family. When we take vacation, we go somewhere, the day before, we always come back a day early. Like we never come back on the day before work.
Yeah.
Because I'll always have a buffer. We've got to have this buffer day of
really wise.
Nothing around the house, just doing random things, chill, then get ready for work. What would you say to somebody? It's like your advice for that re-entry coming back from a time away.
Well, you just did it, so.
Well, it's funny because you were talking about coming back from vacation. We have a family ritual of we go to Rosa's to get the big fajita meal at Rosa's. I don't know why, but whenever we come back, usually we've been gone. We haven't had Tex-Mex in a while, but we want something quick and easy. And so that's just like a little family, kind of a family ritual thing. That's great. That's funny. Re-entry.
This pod is brought to you by Rosa's.
There you go. Hey, if we could get a sponsorship from Rosa's, I'd be all over that. I think that what I've tried to do on re-entry is just come back in with a kind of just hyper awareness, right, of what's going on underneath the surface. I can operate just go, fast, busy, demanding, right? From this to that to the other thing. And even, very aware coming into the weekend with the elders. Normally when I get into that space, it's like, I got my slides, I'm going to do this, presentation, and we're going to talk about goals. And I just said, guys, I want you to know I'm coming back in, not with, polished presentations, and I don't have 6 of this and 4 of that and big initiatives. I'm coming back to share with you what God's done in my life over the course of these last 3 months, and to invite you into that. And even as we entered into that, just mindful, like, God, help me not to get into performance mode, but just to be really fully present here now. So, I think one of the things that is just so important is cultivating that ongoing awareness of what's happening in our interior worlds underneath the surface in the midst of our day in and day out. And so sometimes that opportunity to get away, to do that spiritual introspection, allows us to re-enter in a way that now I can have more of that sense of spiritual introspection, more of that sense of what's going on in my interior world underneath the surface in the midst of the demands of the everyday.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a real practical level, it's a little bit of what you said of coming in. Like my first day back, I'm making sure that I don't have all these meetings because I know I've got to catch up and find out what's going on. What did I miss? Check in on emails and all of that. So that's a real practical thing. I think the other thing is we often, or I do this, and maybe you could relate. You go on vacation or a sabbatical or whatever it is, and that's this great time of rest and renewal. And then you come back to this perhaps a pace that is not healthy. And so I'm thinking about, how is my pace when I get back? Because it's great that I went on this vacation, but if I'm just coming back to this unhealthy rhythm, that's not going to be helpful. And so then how do I bring that healthy rhythm of work and rest back into my everyday life? Yeah. Willard talks about, right? Yeah. You must arrange your life to live with deep contentment, joy, and confidence in the everyday experience of your life with God. Yeah. And that's like our number one goal that we go after. Yeah. What does that look like?
We may talk about it more extensively on a future episode, but a big part of my reflection during sabbatical was about this whole idea of a rule of life and a more stable, consistent set of rhythms and patterns. And so I've done a lot of work around coming back in with that mentality of like, I don't want to just come back and operate exactly how I was before. Not that I was, wildly off track before, but there's an opportunity for a sort of reset to come in and to do that work that God has given me to do, right? Mm-hmm. To steward well what's been given to me, and yet to enter back in with some rhythms and routines, some habits, some ways of using and guarding my time and energy that I hope to be different than than where we were before. And so, using that opportunity when you take a break to be mindful of how do I want to operate differently coming back in. I think it's great.
When you read the New Testament, Jesus is a pretty busy guy. When he took breaks, what did they look like? Even Jesus needed breaks. Yeah. What did they look like?
Well, I think that's just worth underscoring before we get into what it looked like. Is just the reality. Even Jesus needed breaks, right? That Jesus is the fully human one, fully God, fully human, but shows us what a fully human life looks like. And so this rhythm of engagement and withdrawal you see all over the pages of the Gospels. I talked on Monday, first day back with the staff, all staff meeting, about this tension that we experience in ministry between abounding in the work of the Lord, Paul says, and then abiding in Christ, Jesus talks about in John 15. And there's just this tension between abounding, working hard, overflowing in the work of the Lord, and abiding in Christ, cultivating that sense of dynamic dependence on God. There's a tension that we carry with us, and it's a tension that you see in Jesus' life and ministry between abounding and abiding. He lived it well. He embodied it well, and we look to him as the model. But just being reminded, even Jesus needed that rhythm of engagement and withdrawal.
How much more do we then? Yeah. I mean, you see, Jesus sends out the disciples, and they go out and they're preaching and they're healing, and they come back and they're reporting to him everything that they've done. And he says, come away with me and get some rest. Let's go to a quiet place. And then you see Jesus do this. He feeds the 5,000, and then he goes to, the scriptures tell us, a solitary place, a lonely place, a desolate place to be alone with God. That's how Jesus rested, by communing with the Father. And how much more do we need that if the Son of God needed that, and if he modeled that for us? So
Jesus needed breaks. Pastor Barry needed a break. And you need a break, whoever's listening to this at some point. So hopefully that conversation helped a little bit with that and got a little insight into Barry's sabbatical. Yep. And if you're an IBCer, or if you're not in person, you can watch online on Sunday too and hear more about his sabbatical and
more about falling into the Royal Gorge and rafting trip. So
we always end each episode with some fun banter. And I was like, all right, what are some things that if Barry was truly unplugged and didn't keep up with much in the world over the past 3 months, and we don't have a ton of time, so we'll just do a couple. I got to ask you about a couple things. Okay. I got to get some opinions.
Here we go.
Barry's hot takes?
Yeah. You love
Barry's hot takes.
You love to put my hot takes out there, get me in trouble with people.
All right, so trivia question. Who won the NBA Finals? This is why you were gone.
Is that basketball? Oh man, I know the answer to this question. It was while I was gone.
Was it really? It was their first title, and
but would you know if you were here?
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
I feel like I knew at the time, and that's months ago now.
It's the Denver Nuggets.
Really?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. Barbie versus Oppenheimer.
Did you watch it?
I have not seen both of them yet.
Okay.
I have seen Oppenheimer, and I thought it was a pretty incredible film. Yeah. I mean, it deals with the moral complexity and ambiguity of that whole story, I think, well, and just visually and sonically pretty stunning. So, it was pretty remarkable. I've not seen Barbie yet. I've actually heard really good things. My wife and daughter went and saw it, enjoyed it. My oldest son has seen it, and he did the whole what is it, Barbenheimer? They did he and his buddies did the weekend where they
did Barbenheimer?
They did them all together. Yeah. So yeah.
If you just told me you've seen one movie, would you have guessed Oppenheimer?
Yeah, that's the one I would have guessed.
See, I would have guessed Barbie because of like the whole family.
No, but yeah,
I think I saw one other movie during sabbatical. So can you guess?
Mission Impossible?
There it is. So I like the escape from reality,
yes, so
sort of like
when I'm on a break. Escaped with Oppenheimer.
Yeah, that was not an escape. That was not an escape.
Yeah. I seen Oppenheimer. Great movie. 3 hours long.
Is it 3 hours?
I was like, that was a great movie. I don't know how much of a rewatch that is, but great movie.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Another question for you. Or gotta get your opinion.
I saw my son in the control room making some kind of gesture with a hat and I was like, some fishing. Did I see a fishing movie? I saw Indiana Jones. So Will and I went together for old time's sake and saw Indiana Jones. Yes. And it wasn't a great film, but it was satisfying. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
it was nostalgic.
It
was nostalgic.
I'm not gonna say it looks good on the trailer,
but we have special memories of Indiana Jones together. So it was a father-son bonding moment. So,
okay, so there was a special, maybe I say congressional hearing on UFOs.
Oh,
did you see this?
No.
I was here and I didn't see this.
Congressional hearing.
All right, well, we're just going to have to push pause on this one. So we'll talk about UFOs on another podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a whole thing about it. Like a guy testified in court, and there was a whole.
I missed this whole thing.
All right. Well, if you're a listener, ask Barry on Sunday about UFOs. Okay, this is my last one. So we had a staff field day while you were gone, like an Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 3 of the games, and you tell me which one that you would have competed in.
Oh, my word.
There was a watermelon eating contest.
Okay.
There was a toss the cow tongue, like a cow tongue.
Actual cow tongue?
Ultimate Frisbee kind
of.
And then there was a mini bike race.
Okay.
Just for toddler bikes.
Like tricycles.
Yeah. So clearly, me on a mini toddler bike is a really bad idea.
Sissy.
I bet Sissy did.
I was a cheering section for.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
So I'm not afraid of a cow tongue. I'd get in there and mix it up on that.
Okay.
But I could also seriously eat some watermelon. So yeah, I'd do whatever my team needed me to do, especially if I was on Crystal Elwell's team. So our worship pastor, I when we do these competition things, there's this part of me that wants to be on Crystal's team because there's a really good chance we're going to win. Yeah. But then there's also this part of me that's afraid to be on Crystal's team because if our team doesn't win and it somehow is my fault, I don't want to deal with it. Yeah, she's the most competitive person that I know.
We were on the same team for cow tongue and we ended up winning that one.
Yeah, there you go.
Sissy played cow tongue.
I did play cow tongue. I don't know why.
The watermelon one confused me because I love watermelon, and I was like, man, I feel like I could do this well.
Did you do it?
But people really struggled with it.
Yeah, they did.
And I was like, so then
massive quantities of watermelon
and
isn't
some people
quite
have this aversion to watermelon.
Yeah.
which we discovered. But
Interesting.
I love watermelon.
Yeah.
All right, there's a lot more things that happened over the past 3 months, but we can't cover them all. And honestly, I wanted to go more into UFOs, but
You're
future
so disappointed.
episode.
Yeah.
Future episode.
This is a future episode. We got to talk about UFOs later.
We'll research it we'll be for the next episode. Make sure we got
All
our
right.
talking points.
Guys, Barry is back. We're super excited. And Barry, thanks for it's not a hologram. You're actually here.
Hi.
We'll be back next week for another episode of Formed. Will's fishing.